You left the military years ago, maybe 10 years, maybe 20, maybe 30. You have pain today. You have a diagnosis today. But when you look back at the record, there is a problem. The paper trail is thin. Maybe you never went to sick call. Maybe the records got lost. Maybe you pushed through it for years and never said a word. And now you are wondering, is it too late? Is the gap too wide? Is the story too old to prove? Here is what you need to understand before you file, before you give up, or before you let that fear make the decision for you. A long gap does not automatically kill a VA claim, but the gap does not explain itself. That is the part you have to take control of. And in this video, I am going to show you exactly what that means. In the last series, the C and P exam Battlefield SOP series, we closed out with handling the hostile examiner, your 48-hour window to report a bad exam and protect your claim. That video was about what to do in the first 48 hours after a bad, rushed, or hostile exam, how to protect the claim record, how to respond before the window closes. That was one specific battlefield. This series is a different mission entirely, because for many older veterans, the biggest problem is not what happens in the exam room. The biggest problem is what happened over the last 10, 20, or 30 years. Years of symptoms, years of pushing through, years of not documenting, years of not even knowing the VA claim process existed, and now there is a gap in the record. That gap is what this series is about. Welcome to the Over 40 Veteran Gap Strategy Series. This first video covers the basics, what the gap is, why it matters, what a VA claim still needs, even with thin records, and how to start building the evidence bridge between your service and your condition today. Let's get into it. What the gap is and why it matters. Let's define the terrain first. A VA disability claim for service connection generally needs three things: a current diagnosis, an in-service event, injury, illness, exposure, or aggravation, and a nexus, a connection between the two. That is the framework. Now here is where older veterans run into trouble. VA looks at the record and sees military service on one side. It sees a current diagnosis on the other side, and then it looks for the bridge between them. That is the gap, not a gap in your military service, not a gap in your diagnosis, a gap in the documented story of what happened between then and now. That is where claims fall apart. Not because the veteran is lying, not because the condition is fake, but because the record is silent for years, sometimes decades, and silence is a problem in a VA claim. VA needs to see a believable bridge, not a perfect one, not a flawless paper trail, but a believable one built on honest evidence, consistent statements, and a clear explanation of what happened. The gap is not the end of the claim. The gap is the part you have to explain, why the gap exists, and why that is not shameful. A lot of veterans feel embarrassed about this. They waited too long. They did not document it. They did not get treatment for years. Here is the reality. Most veterans who separated in the 1980s, 1990s, or early 2000s did not have someone explaining the VA claims process on their way out the door. That is not on the veteran, and there are honest, understandable reasons why treatment gaps exist. Some veterans avoided sick call because of unit culture. Going meant weakness. Going meant questions from leadership. Going meant missing the mission. Some veterans self-treated, ibuprofen, braces, ice, rest, whatever worked well enough to get through the next day. Some veterans were focused on transition, finding work, taking care of their family, keeping the lights on. Some honestly did not believe the condition was serious enough to address until it got worse. None of those reasons are excuses. They are context. And providing honest context, explaining why the gap exists, is part of building a credible claim. That matters more than most veterans realize. The traps that keep veterans from moving forward. Let's talk about the beliefs that stop veterans from filing or from building the claim correctly. Trap 1. It has been too long. It is too late. In many cases, a veteran can still file years after service. The issue is not always whether it is too late to file. The issue is whether the evidence can still support the connection. A long gap makes the claim harder to build. It does not make it impossible. Trap 2. I have no records, so I have no claim. Missing records make the claim harder. They do not automatically end it. Buddy statements. spouse or family statements, personal statements, pharmacy records, private medical records, old employment physicals, personnel records showing MOS and duty history. Missing records are a problem to work around, not a wall that cannot be moved. Trap 3. VA should just believe me. A veteran's statement matters. It genuinely does, but it works best when it is specific, consistent, and supported by other evidence. My back started in service is a starting point, a statement that explains what happened when symptoms started, how the veteran managed the condition over the years, and how it affects daily life today. That is a much stronger document. Trap 4. A diagnosis is all I need. A diagnosis tells VA what you have today. It does not explain why that condition is connected to military service. A diagnosis without a nexus is not enough for service connection. VA still needs a reason to connect today's condition to what happened during service. That is where a lot of late filed claims fall short. Trap 5. I should make it sound worse than it is. No. Exaggeration hurts claims. When statements are inconsistent with medical records or exam findings, VA may document that inconsistency, and that can damage the claim. The goal is not drama. The goal is accuracy. A calm, specific, truthful statement is stronger than an inflated one, every time. Trap 6. A bad C and P exam is the only problem. For many older veterans, the problem started long before the exam. The record already had a gap. The timeline was already unclear. The evidence bridge was never built. When that is the case, responding after a bad exam is not enough. The real work is building the record before the decision is made. That is this mission. What your claim still needs, even with thin records. Let's go back to the framework. Current diagnosis, in-service event or exposure, nexus connecting the two. You may not have a perfect paper trail, but you can organize what you do have and identify what may still be missing. On the service side, what can you document? Service treatment records, if they exist or can be requested. Military personnel records showing MOS, duty history, and assignments. Deployment records, performance evaluations, line of duty reports, buddy statements from people who served with you and witnessed your duties, your injury, or your early symptoms. Even if sick call records are missing, some of these documents may still help paint a picture of what your service actually involved. On the current side, what can you document? Your current diagnosis from a treating physician, treatment history, even if it started years after separation, pharmacy records, private medical records, VA medical records, physical therapy notes, imaging, specialist evaluations. In the middle, how do you build the bridge? This is where a well-written personal statement does heavy lifting. A strong personal statement explains what happened in service when symptoms started, how the veteran managed the condition over the years, why there is a treatment gap, honestly, and how the condition affects daily life today. It does not diagnose. It does not pretend to be a medical opinion. It tells the honest story clearly. And in some cases, a medical opinion or nexus letter from a qualified clinician may be needed to formally connect the diagnosis to service. That opinion needs to be based on accurate facts. If the history provided is inconsistent with the records, the opinion may be less reliable, or it may hurt the claim rather than help it. Accuracy matters. Credibility matters. How to explain the gap without hurting your credibility. Explain the gap directly. Do not avoid it. VA will see the gap in the record, whether you mention it or not. The question is whether VA has context for why it exists, or whether the silence just looks like silence. Here is what honest gap explanation can sound like. Not scripts, not magic words, just plain English examples of honest communication. I did not seek medical care during this period because the condition was manageable and I was focused on supporting my family after transition. I avoided sick call during service because the unit culture discouraged it. I was not aware of the VA claims process at the time of separation and did not seek treatment through VA until recently. My symptoms continued throughout this period, but I self-managed with over-the-counter medication, ice, and rest. The point is honesty and context, not rehearsal. If VA already denied you, read the letter carefully. If you have already filed and been denied, this section matters. VA decision letters often contain phrases that point directly at the gap. Phrases like no nexus to military service, no evidence of chronicity, no continuity of symptomatology, condition not incurred in or aggravated by service. When VA uses that language in a denial, it is often telling you exactly where the bridge is broken. That is useful information. The letter may not just be bad news, it may be showing you what VA said was missing, which means it may be showing you what needs to be addressed if you pursue a supplemental claim or another step. But to use that information, you have to understand what the letter is actually saying. A lot of veterans read the denial, see the decision, and stop there. They miss the reasons for decision. They miss the evidence considered section. They miss the specific language that explains what VA found and what it did not. Read the whole letter. Slow down. If the language is confusing, that is where the free VA Letter Translator can help. If VA has already sent you a decision letter, a denial letter, or a confusing VA notice, and you are not sure what it really means, use my free VA Letter Translator at veteranclaimsmadeeasy.com/VA-letter-translator. It helps turn VA language into plain English so you can better understand what VA is saying, what may be missing, and what your next step may need to be. That tool is free. It is educational. It does not file claims. It does not replace a VSO, an accredited representative, or an attorney. It does not guarantee any outcome. It is simply a way to help you understand the letter before you decide what to do next. veteranclaimsmadeeasy.com/VA-letter-translator. Here is your 48-hour gap challenge. Take a piece of paper, write down the condition you are thinking about claiming. Under that, write down what happened in service that you believe is connected. Under that, write down when symptoms started and how they continued over the years. Under that, write down why there is a treatment gap, honestly, in your own words. Under that, write down what evidence you already have. And finally, write down what is still unclear or missing. That is your starting point. That is the beginning of the evidence bridge. It is not a claim form. It is not legal advice. It is not a path to guaranteed approval. It is clarity. And clarity is where every strong claim starts. Let's pull it together. A long gap in the record does not automatically kill a VA claim, but the gap does not explain itself. A strong claim with a long gap still needs three things: a current diagnosis, an in-service event or exposure, and a credible connection between the two. When records are thin, other evidence may help: personal statements, buddy statements, duty history, pharmacy records, private medical records, and medical opinions when needed. Explaining the gap honestly is not a weakness. It is context. Your job is to build the evidence bridge honestly, clearly, and with the best evidence available. The gap is not the end of the claim. The gap is the part you have to explain. In this video, we focused on what to do when records are thin, and the veteran has to build the evidence bridge from scratch. In the next video, we are shifting to a different situation, conditions where VA may already presume the connection because of where and when you served. We are covering the 2026 PACT Act updates, new presumptive conditions for Gulf War and post 9/11 veterans, and what evidence veterans still need to document even when a condition is presumptive. Because presumptive does not mean automatic, and understanding that distinction before you file may save you from a denial you did not expect. That video is next. If VA has already sent you a decision letter or denial letter and you are not sure what it means, use the free VA Letter Translator at veteranclaimsmadeeasy.com/VA-letter-translator. It helps you understand VA language in plain English before you decide your next step. Free resources are also available at veteranclaimsmadeeasy.com/resources. My goal is never to mislead, only to empower you with accurate, honest, and actionable information.